If I join a space and I find people talking like that, then I will leave. But up until now, I think that there've been a lot of discussions here. I've been listening. Not everything I agree with, but I think it's an interesting space because I think this is an interesting and important topic, for future generations. And when suddenly you get spiked by something like that, I feel that the mood has changed. And if everyone here said to me, no, we like what he's saying and we agree with him, then I would have left, and I wouldn't be interested in being in spaces with people who agree with that. It's simple.
I know, I understand, and I've taken myself off of many spaces for that very reason. Anyway, that's not what I was going to say, but if everyone's happy not to talk about Nazis, then I just had a question about the use of the word gender, which I've heard many women use here. And I know you're aware of the kind of the history of that word, and where in some cultures it was used to replace the word sex because sex can be icky to some people and some cultures. I personally prefer just to use the word sex because I think it's just the clearest way to differentiate between the different sexes, not genders. So I was just wondering what you guys think about that. Does using the word gender to denote sex rather than gender to denote gender woo, do you think that's confusing, or do you think we should be using both or just gender? So it's just a question mainly for for the
I'll
space.
answer that real quick after I'm going to address one of the other points with respect to like kicking people. So normally I really don't like to kick people, but I think also the problem is...
Everyone gets to do this talking.
Oh, sorry, someone's talking?
I'm sorry.
Is someone speaking that I can't hear? No?
Yeah, somebody, I think John...
Sorry, I had my mic on. Sorry. I was just trying.
Okay. So I think, especially because we constantly get smeared as fascists, we have to be extra vigilant, even with the appearance of impropriety. And so I think that's a huge problem too. So it's not just about it's also about optics, because unfortunately optics do play a role, especially because especially when you have a platform that people are looking to weaponize or looking for things to weaponize against you. And I think that also necessitates extra vigilance. And I think that's something that constantly needs to be kept in mind, especially just, for example, the Posey Parker thing, where the Nazis showed up at Posey Parker's rally, and even though they were there, essentially to basically, they weren't supporting them because they were it's a feminist movement. And their association there was purely for the Nazis, the white supremacists' benefit, because they were going to get media coverage by being there. But their presence was going to get them media attention. And that, by proxy, smeared Posey Parker and created an entire problem. So I think even the appearance of impropriety is huge here when we're already getting constantly smeared, and when the left looks for the most minute reason to attack us. I think that's why I ended up removing ultimately, because I wasn't aware initially that what was happening. I kept hearing the word Jewish. I was leaning towards something's happening here, and then I heard the Elders of Zion, and then Sub was like, "Oh, that's anti-Semitic conspiracy theory." So I was like, "Oh, time to go." But yeah. Oh, and to your other point, I think for the gender and sex thing. So they obviously tried to make an intentional divergence of gender and sex. So obviously gender represents the social connotations that applied to sex, and there's an intentional separation of that in the 80s. I think it was around the 80s when that became popularized. But now we see, as there has been widespread acceptance of that concept, there has been attempted re-divergence. So somehow sex and gender are two mutually exclusive separate concepts, yet they are selectively linked when it's convenient again. So I don't really think I think in certain contexts it's best to use the word sex to make it a very clear point. But at this point, I'm not sure it really matters because it's going to be used disingenuously either way. But if Amanda wants to go.
Oh, hi guys. Sorry for bringing this back because what happened there just kind of threw me off. It took the conversation in a totally different tangent. When Tupac was talking with the women. But I do just have to say, I do not like what happened there. Sub-effect, I don't, we don't need to agree on everything, which is absolutely fine. But he gave his opinion and that woman was trying to answer him. And you come in like a raging bull saying, no, this is anti-Semitic, I need to, butt in here. The host already said she did not have a clue about any of this conversation and didn't know what was going on. I agreed with some of what he said. Fruella agreed with some of what he said. The other women clearly agreed with some of what he said. Nobody could tell you they were agreeing because I was trying to tell you, but you were too loud and wouldn't listen and continued to talk. Nobody else could tell you because there were very little speakers. 2 people have left the room because of it, and I left, but I just had to come back to say this because I'm absolutely fuming. What a way to shut people down and silencing people with anti-Semitic. It's the same as calling people racist. We talk to people who want to fucking literally chop kids up and inject them with fucking wrong sex hormones, and we let them clowns and them freak shows talk in our fucking spaces and we try and have conversations with them. That was an absolute shutting down of any conversation without letting anybody listen to anything. And I don't like that. It's got fuck all to do with free speech. Right side, you don't even know, as you've just said, anything about this. And, now all of a sudden, and let me tell you something, there's a lot of TERFs who do know that this is happening and who do see what's happening. But you know what? Because of people like you, Sub, when you do things like that, right, we have to have actual just private groups in the background. Because do you know why? They don't want to let people know what they know and what they think, because then people won't take their TERFing seriously. They think that they won't take, just like what you've said, right side, the way you've been conned there into, oh, well, I don't want any of that in my space because, if you let people like that speak, then look what's happened to Posey Parker. Posey Parker doesn't give a fuck either. She still doesn't stand and denounce them because no matter what you do, you're going to come across people like that who are going to call you transphobic, homophobic, etc., to shut you the fuck up and shut you down. That's never, ever going to be a right way to run a society. And I know you said, Sub, that you get no power and nobody cares. Well, exactly. So it's not an airport. You don't need to announce your departure. Do you know what I mean? If you don't like, I don't think it was very fair to say to the host, if you let this conversation continue, I'll be leaving and I won't be coming into any of your spaces. If you think you're insignificant, then nobody cares. You know you've done that for a reason. Do you know what I mean? That was said for a reason to make your statement. So please don't do the gaslighting thing, because honestly, but I'm fucking fuming with that. No hard
I've done it I said that to express the level of my displeasure that individual is being allowed to speak, and I understand why you may find this shutting down freedom of speech, but I'm going to make a statement now which is going to sound too extreme. But if it sounds too extreme, it's because you don't know anything about this specific text that he is talking about. Stating that is a real text when it is completely fake, and saying that it has got anything to do with anything that anyone alive today is planning, it is no different, and it really is qualitatively no different to saying Mein Kampf should be the basis for how we run society. That is how anti-Semitic it is. Okay, genuinely, that is how anti-Semitic it is. So, perhaps you don't realise that, but that is the case. And if you would you accept someone?
Yeah.
I'm afraid it seems like you're ignorant on this point. Would you have accepted it if he had said, and Mein Kampf tells us this? Would you have accepted him talking then? If he said, "Listen, we need to pay attention to Mein Kampf."
I would have accepted him introducing the subject, but you continuing the subject for 10, 20 minutes in gender ideology, I think that's the problem. He can raise it for like 30 seconds, and that's fine, but you keep going on to this anti-Semitism. So why don't you just go find an anti-Semitism?
I'm sorry, I'm not as bolshy as a man.
Then you'll be able to speak for 45 minutes from now.
But you come across as quite patronising. Just now saying maybe we don't understand it. A lot of people do know the text you're talking about. A lot of people will think it's perhaps nonsense, but the kind of the delivery wasn't helpful, and also to say something like to right side, you allowed this person to express this is just going back to the whole point on free speech, which is why we're in this position. So I get you. I agree with you probably more than you think, but not in the way you are trying to censor this discussion and assume that we don't know what he was referring to. And I think there was enough women in this space, or enough men in this space, to be able to challenge Tupac directly on certain things. So it's knight in shining armor stuff. We do understand it, but it just feels like you're trying to control somebody else's space that was specifically around gender ideology, and somebody wasn't aware of what the subject was and started talking. It may be in some conspiratorial terms, maybe not, depending on your view, but I don't think it was your place to assume that we don't know what he was talking about, or whether
I don't assume that you don't know it. I don't assume that you don't know it, but I really think for what Amanda just said about how people get called TERFs and get called racist and all this by the TRAs. There's a lot of accusations that get thrown around, which are fake and they're intended to shut people down. But someone saying that, if you look at this text, which is, there's no doubt that individual has read about the text and knows that it's a debunked text and is still talking about it. So, if there's any question as to whether they're anti-Semitic or not, I think it's pretty obvious, So that was just my opinion on it.
I know what I think personally, but also I think the kind of the gotcha being Wikipedia, and I know it's been debunked. Wikipedia hasn't been a friend to women in this movement.
Can I just? I'll ask you just one question. It's the last thing I'll say. Okay, and then I'm going to go down from speaker. Do you believe that person is anti-Semitic? That Tupac, do you believe that he's anti-Semitic coming out with what he said and the way he behaved? The question.
I'm not. Here's that question too. Is it me or Amanda or somebody else? Because it's not my.
No, to you.
My view is that sometimes you should let people speak long enough to really show you who they are, and then it doesn't end up derailing a conversation about something else. So peace and love. I'm going into the sunshine.
That was a mess. Because my platform is getting so large, and I have constantly people in my spaces secretly recording and then creating sound bites and then spreading them around. That is something that I'd rather be safer than sorrier about. So
right side, let give you a wee tip. Your platform is getting bigger, and people are doing that. And we tried to take it to private platforms, but we found that then it just becomes an echo chamber. And we need platforms like yours. You've got a lot of people in your space, and we need to get the word out there. So if people are recording it, what a lot of the women are doing is just recording their own spaces. So just record your own space, and if anybody tries to twist it or change it or turn it, the recording is there for everybody to see, and you can get a copy of it as well. Just a thought.